Hold on, you don't want to miss this episode of Faith in Your Recovery. Welcome to the battle. When you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, we're here for you and with you. I'm your host, Randy Davis, a former pastor, founder, and executive director of A Better Life, Brianna's Hope. We are a participant-driven, faith-based, and compassion-filled support and recovery movement for those battling the battle with substance use disorder/addiction. In our exhaustive effort to offer you all things recovery, today we're connecting one more piece to the recovery puzzle. We're excited to have with us Jack Surguy. Hi, Jack.
Hi, how are you today?
Hey, I'm good. Thank you for your time. We appreciate you coming to join us, and I look forward to what you have to share.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I've kind of read through your resume. I've seen some of your background. Your education sounds pretty rich. I envy some of the experiences you've had, and some of them I wouldn't want to touch.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've definitely lived on both sides of the track, you could say.
We're anxious to hear some of that. So instead of me trying to say too much to the folks, why don't you go ahead and tell us about the first side of the track, okay, or the far side of the track. Maybe tell us a little about your upbringing.
Okay. I guess, the far side of the track then would be kind of my life in addictions. Growing up, I had an older half-brother that was about 10 years older than me. So when I was 8, he was 18. He lived with his father at that point in time. And a lot of times I'd go and spend the weekends with him, almost every weekend, actually. And at that point in time in Ohio, you only had to be 18 to purchase alcohol. And so my older brother at that point in time, every weekend, he would go to Ohio, purchase alcohol, bring it back into Indiana, and was feeding me alcohol at about the age of 8. That's when I started.
Well, I've heard many stories of those older siblings helping that younger one out and getting them off on a bad track.
Yeah, I had that. Not only that, but my sister married someone that wasn't a great influence as well. And from probably about the age of 12 or so, he really introduced me into the harder alcohols, whiskey, and started introducing me to marijuana and things like that. I was about 11 or 12.
You know what? I understand that's pretty much the average anymore where most addictions begins, about 12 years old, 7th grade, and you kind of fit that mold there, it sounds like.
Yep.
What was that like for you? What kind of struggles, or what did that create in your mind? What kind of confusion, chaos, or... Yeah, tell us.
It did create, I think one of probably the leading impact it had on me today, still to this day, is helping me cope with stress. Instead of being able to come home and so when you're young and you're learning to deal with stress, you learn how to modulate your body to where, you're stressed, and just on your own natural abilities, you learn to, be able to come down to a non-stress level and everything. To where even back then I was learning to rely on these substances to help me regulate. Then, so when you got upset, you drank. When you got happy, you drank, or any of those types of things. And so even to this day, when I struggle with stress or I struggle with anxiety, there's a really hard component that wants me to turn to these substances to be able to cope with those things.
What keeps you from doing that? What keeps you from falling back in that hole?
What I have in my life today, to be honest with you, I did, even though I came from all this education and had a promising career, I went through a divorce and really, really fell hard back on drugs and alcohol and things like that, to the point that I ended up with nothing. And that's where I landed in the Christian Center, was trying to come up off of that. And now at this point in time in my life, I have good, steady employment again. I have somebody in my life that cares tremendously about me. And my faith as well, to where I don't want to. It's not worth it.
How long ago was that, Jack, that you made that fall? Ballpark.
That was probably about 14 years ago.
Okay.
And I spent a good 10 years it wrapped up pretty heavily in addictions. I actually overdosed probably about 4 to 5 times. I totaled a couple of cars. Was really far into that because, I'd given up. I kind of had a planned for my life, and had 3 children at that point in time, and then the divorce kind of came out of nowhere, and it just knocked me for a loop. And so, kind of like I said, growing up, the coping skills that I used was based on drugs and alcohol. And so when that hit, how'd I deal with that emptiness? How'd I deal with all those things? It was going right back really heavily into drugs and alcohol again.
I don't mind saying as you share this that I received a phone call yesterday morning from a cousin that I don't often hear from. And when you do, it's not usually good news. Right. Not because we're estranged, but that's just where we're at relationally due to life. And she informed me how our cousin's son had taken his own life. That was just night before last, alcohol related. Yeah. The divorce coming up is what put him over the edge. It was the final straw, if I can use that expression. Yeah. He had battled it a long time and fought all those demons that go with it, the ups and the downs, the job issues. And, of course, COVID hadn't done any of us any favors.
Right. And, I have to admit, there were times when I was extremely suicidal. And where it becomes so tricky and where it becomes so dangerous is that you start thinking in your mind that, you got all these relatives, all these loved ones that tell you, they care about you, they want to see you do better, and they're worried about you all the time. And you start thinking they would be better off if I was no longer here. And that's where, in my mind, you really start in on dangerous ground because you actually start thinking that you're going to do your family a favor by giving in to those impulses.
So, if you'll pardon the expression, what got you out of that stinking thinking?
My kids. One of the things I learned in my education in psychology is that when a parent commits suicide, that increases the chance of the children committing suicide by about 50%. And I thought to myself, I do not want to do that to my children. Also with that, with children of, they really, really struggle with, why wasn't I important enough for my parent to hang around? And so really it wasn't even because I honestly extremely disliked myself, but I love my kids enough to where I was willing to hang on.
You love them more than you love yourself,
100%.
And that made it worth it.
I made it worth it.
Wow. I get a lot of that. As we go back to your days of education, what led you into those fields of psychology, counseling, the whole list?
Yeah. I was the first person from my family to go to college. As a matter of fact, I actually moved out of my parents' place when I was 17. I'd gotten in so much trouble where I'd been living that when I tried to go back to school there, there was a lot of disruptions. There'd been a lot of violence where I'd grown up at, and so those things were still issues. And so I had a really good friend actually work at this church, and had actually convinced the church to open up their gymnasium. They had a couple little closets off their gymnasium. They actually opened them up to me and let me live there in the gymnasium. I had a shower, had a kitchen area, and everything else like that for me to finish high school. Church was it still is, but is an extremely important part of my life at that point in time. And I decided I wanted to go in the ministry. And so through my connections with this one individual who really stressed education, I decided to try college. And so I actually went to Anderson University, where I got my degree in biblical studies. And what's funny is the psychology part of it, everybody had talked about how difficult this psychology class was. Even the general psych class, a lot of people failed it, I guess, and everything like that. So I waited till my junior year to take it. And then come to find out, everything clicked, and I'm getting A's on everything. And for the first time, people are coming to me saying, "Hey, will you tutor me in this stuff?" And I just fell in love with it to the point that I started, the last 2 years of college, I took all the psychology classes I could. And then after I graduated, I went into seminary. And then I thought, hey, why not? Actually applied for a master's degree in psychology, and I was actually doing the master's of psychology and master's in biblical studies at the same time for about a year and a half. So,
wow,
yeah.
Wow. So I'm trying to put some of that together in my own head here, and as I hear you talk, how you put the psychology classes on delay, and then once you got in there, you found out that was your niche.
That was my niche, yes.
Do you think that some of that plays back to your earlier life? You went through those struggles. You didn't just have to read some of this. You knew it, but now it's in different words.
Yes.
You could identify.
Yes. I was able to identify a lot of it. Some of the things I read, my struggles at that point in time, it was like, oh, this makes sense. This makes sense, and so, kind of like I said, growing up in the environment I did, it was an extremely, it was very violent, a very mentally unhealthy environment. I love my parents, love them very much. They're both deceased, but my mom, had a mental illness. And she struggled with becoming extremely explosive at times and violent and things like that, to where, when you live under those conditions, you become a people watcher. You know what I mean? You really, really, really are watching because you're trying to figure out, is this person safe or not?
Yes.
So, you're watching all these things. You're constantly trying to figure people out, as a child for you to stay safe. And so with all that experience through my life, taking these psychology classes, like, oh, yeah, I've recognized that. Oh, yeah, that makes sense and things like that. So, yeah, it just really fell into place.
I don't know if to say it's funny is the right word to use, but at least it's a dichotomy, the way God would use those dark moments, those struggles, to get you where he wants you. You may go in there kicking and screaming, but you
still kicking and screaming sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. Just like your psychology classes, it was the last thing you were going to do, and the first thing that I get the impression started to click and started to build some extra pride and hope in you.
That was the other classes and everything like that. I was, that was one of the things too in just my experience in college. Because growing up, education wasn't stressed at all. It really wasn't. You were expected to hopefully finish high school. Then you were expected to go get a job at the local factory or, anything like that. There was not even a conversation about higher education. It wasn't even on the radar. And so being introduced to that, through my friend and everything, it was intimidating. But I found out I loved it. I really loved it. And I remember my professors one time, I was going in, I talked to him and stuff, and I'll never forget this. I told him, I was like, how do you know all this stuff? And he looked at me, he goes, Jack said, you're just as smart as I am. He goes, I've just read more books at this point in time. And that was life-changing for me, because I thought, maybe I am good at this stuff. And I excelled in the biblical classes, but when I got into psychology, that's where I kind of became kind of a star, because, like I said, I was getting the highest grades, people coming to me, asking me for tutoring and things. And that's the first time that had happened, So.
That's awesome. We all need that moment to recognize I have something to give.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah. Yeah, so let's kind of move from that to your faith journey, and then from there we'll move ahead to today, what you're doing and the way you're impacting lives. So tell us a little about your faith journey, please, besides, just the education and the Anderson.
My parents growing up, there was the talk, hey, we're religious. My mom was really off and on, would take us to church sometimes, things like that. But it was not stressed at all, really. And like I said, I fell into drugs and alcohol, pretty early. And it really got to the point to where that had a stranglehold on me. To the point, when I was like 17, was dealing with all those issues, was really, really struggling with depression and things like that. And I had a failed attempt at suicide to where I cut my wrist, but I was so intoxicated and so messed up at that point in time that I didn't do a good job of it. And luckily, I was spared. And I went ahead and went to a rehabilitation center at that point in time. And it was there that I met a guy. His name was Bryce. He was a very, very faithful Christian. And just through some interactions with him, all of a sudden, I don't know, it hit me, and I sat down with him and told him, hey, these are some of the things I've been struggling with, dealing with, things like that, to where even at that point in time, Satanism was real big in the culture, to where I'd even dabbled in those types of things. And I just told him, I need help. And we went to this little room, and he led me through a simple prayer. And that was really the first time that I had really told God that, that I need Christ in my life, and that I need guidance.
You know what? As you share the story of Bryce and the way he came into your life, I think back to you there in your psychology classes. Those who needed help, they'd come to you. Mm-hmm. Bryce was one of those same drawing cards in a different game, to where you recognized something in him that was missing in you that you wanted.
There, to this day, I'm still, as a matter of fact, we're actually going to visit them this weekend down in Tennessee.
Awesome.
He is a professor at Trevecca Nazarene University down there. And he has continued to be, even though we don't talk a whole lot these days, we're so busy, 100% I saw something in him that was real, authentic. And, if someone was to ask me today, do you truly know a Christian, Bryce is the first one that would come to my mind.
That says a bunch.
Because, he went out of his way to truly give into my life. Like I said, I was released from this place. So I went back to my home environment at that point in time. And like I said, it was not healthy. There was still, I'd gotten involved, even as young as I was, with a lot of fighting, people out, beating each other up and using weapons. And, I was in that environment as well. And that's where Bryce started out, to where, he really wanted me to be connected with a church. And so he would drive an hour and a half every weekend and pick me up in my house, and then drive an hour and a half and take me back, where I would stay with him and his family and spend the weekend from Friday till Sunday. And go to church on, Sunday morning, Sunday evening. And then Sunday evening, he would drive an hour and a half, take me home, and an hour and a half back. So you're talking, 6 hours on the road every single weekend to come pick up a kid that, from his words, he saw something in. And so not too often do you find people that will give, they may give money, they may give this, that, but to give that amount of time, I think is rare.
We don't get that time back.
Yeah.
We can earn the dime back, but we don't get the time back.
Right.
And for him to have that kind of heart, as you said. He saw something in you, and there was obviously something in him. And I'm going to guess when you go to see him this weekend, if you ask him if he regretted it, he'd say, not a single mile.
Bryce has he has 5 biological kids, but he always refers to me as to his adopted son, to this day.
That's so nice.
It just he's had such an impact on everyone really that he's come in contact with, and I truly mean it. If Bryce had not come into my life and shown the love of God to me, I have no clue. I'd probably be in prison at this point in time. I probably really, because I couldn't go much longer doing the things I was doing without getting caught. Because they all say you're going to get caught at some point in time. I definitely would have been caught by this point in time and probably done some
prison or dead.
Yes, one or two.
Yeah. We all need a Bryce in our life, and I hope we're all a Bryce to someone else.
Yes.
That they're looking up saying, wow, I like what you've got. I need that. I want that.
Yeah.
Will you help me get it?
Yes.
And we show them that journey. So let's go ahead and kind of lift things up to where we're at today. Tell us about life today, if you would.
Okay. Yeah, I honestly made a pretty significant transition. I worked in psychology for about 15 years. I worked in a lot of residential homes or residential treatment centers. I worked in a private practice down in Tennessee. And, just everything I was going through, I felt like, for some financial reasons, but also just reasons of burnout, I actually moved into the world of corrections, working as a correctional officer at a maximum secure prison. And so, again, what was astounding to me was in working as a therapist for all those years, I was really surprised at how much I drew on my studies, being a biblical major as well from Anderson. That came into a lot of the therapy sessions I worked with. And now I'm seeing, working in corrections, how much of my study in psychology really, really impacts the way I work in that job.
So at this point, you did end up in prison.
Yes. Luckily, I get to go home at the end of the day.
That's a different side of the bar.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. What's that like? You don't have to describe the moments necessarily, but what's it look like for you, and how are you able to give while you're in there? Because it's obvious you're a giving person.
Yeah. It can be difficult. Somebody asked me, I went to a retreat this past weekend, and somebody asked me, what makes you keep going back? And I guess I had 2 answers. One of them was the brotherhood that you experience there, to where when you're in a situation to where your life can really depend on this person in this person's hand, and their life can depend on yours. You develop relationships to where, that's a strong bond to where you don't want to let those people down, And I think second was, how to put this? I thought to myself, if I really want a strong faith, I really want to challenge my faith, it's easy to go and work in a place to where everybody's Christian and you kind of, but go into a place where it truly is a battlefield and be able to maintain your faith and still, to the best of your abilities at times, still continue to try to show love to those that do not appreciate it, I guess, is
They don't need it in their minds. They don't want it. Yes.
They don't want it, and they outright see it as weakness.
Absolutely.
They see you as a weak person. That's a challenge. And I guess, so part of it, for me is how do I continue to show love in an environment like that? And then also continue to show love to the people there, to where you're going to be there. And, what is challenging for me as well, as you can see, I'm a bigger guy. I'm about 6'1". I weigh about 270. I work out a lot.
That's obvious.
Yeah. And, So I'm one of the ones, honestly, that's used a lot of the times of, hey, we're having, fights are breaking out, or this is going on, this is going on. I'm one of the ones that's called to have to go and there's a high risk of having to use force. And it can be difficult to maintain, your faith.
I can't imagine.
Yeah. But at the same time, you do see love in there. You absolutely 100% do see love in there. I hope it's okay for me just to take a second to share a story. I was working in the SEG unit, and which is segregation, which is kind of the prison of the prison, where everybody over there is, in there usually for violence and things like that. They've attacked their officers or attacked somebody else, or they've been found with a weapon or something. And there was two black gentlemen. They're offenders on each side of a guy that was in the middle was a member of the Aryan Brotherhood. Okay, and this guy was pretty hardcore in his beliefs about white supremacy and things all that like this, to where, he would say things to these guys trying to get him riled up. And what I was really surprised about talking from the one guy, he was actually a pretty educated guy, even though he didn't have college education. He was a smart guy. They went out of their way to try to talk to this guy and to show him love and all this other kind of stuff. And it came to one time to where the guy became extremely suicidal and actually hung himself in his cell. And they were yelling to him. They couldn't get him to respond. They actually got worried and yelled for one of the officers to come up there and check. The officer came up there and checked, and sure enough, saw him in the back of the cell hanging. Well, at that point in time, you have to call signal. Then you have to call somebody. They have to go downstairs. They have to get what's called a J-knife. Now, they have to come up 3 sets of stairs, go through 2 doors,
wow,
and then open a cell door, and then come all the way down to the end of the cell door. So you're talking about something that takes time, And this guy's calling on the radio and everything. These 2 gentlemen, they were able to get razors. Okay, they had razors, they were able to. They actually went and started breaking open the razors, cutting themselves in the process to give the razors to the officers so they could get in there quicker and cut this guy down. And I thought to myself, that's love, Here was somebody that hated them because of the color of their skin. And yet
they didn't see the skin, obviously, did they? Scriptures say that man looks on the outside, God looks on the inside.
That's right. And the fact that they were willing to inflict injury upon themselves in order to save somebody that hated them. That's the gospel. That's the gospel.
That's Jesus on the cross.
That's right
there, isn't it?
That's right. So, at the same time, when you experience things like that in the prison as well, it gives you hope. It lets you know that there are some people in there, and there are several people in there that realize they've made a mistake, and they're really, truly trying to turn their lives around.
They're not all bad people. They just made bad choices, right?
Yeah, some of them made horrible bad choices. And we've all
had moments to where we teetered on that,
yes.
And most of us could possibly be there if we'd have been caught.
Right. With me, 100%. If I'd been caught for some of the things I had done, I 100% would have been in there with them. And so I don't, judge them for what they've done in the past. I try not to judge them all. You really try to just work with them on an individual basis. And like I said, the vast majority of them in there, they really don't give you a hard time. They some of them, they're funny.
Sure.
A lot of them have a very strong faith in God. They go to the worship. I have one guy there. Every time when I walk by, hey, how you doing? He pulls, as a curtain, he pulls it back. He's got his Bibles, 4 or 5 Bibles. Well, you know what I'm always doing, man? I'm praying for you, man, and stuff like that, and they to tell you, I really, really appreciate the job you're doing, sir. I mean, you work hard. it just makes you feel good.
Oh, it
makes
has
you feel
to.
good.
You know, earlier you mentioned the word brotherhood, and you were talking more so about those within your circle of brotherhood there that you relied on.
Right.
And I thought kind of ahead of you, then you started talking about some of the groups, the brotherhood groups. And I don't guess I'd ever given any thought to the officers, the guards, whatever the proper title might be, having that brotherhood. But I get that.
Yes.
You have that likeness.
Yes. I mean, and because, you know, here's the thing, especially out at you know, the prison I work at, it's an older prison. And, you know, we work, it's maximum secure. So when you have some prisoners in there that, I mean, they're going to die in there and they know it.
Yes.
You know, they have 190 years, you know. And so giving them a write-up that's going to take 6 months or add 6 months to their sentence, you know, that's nothing, you know. And so you have to work with them on a whole different level. You know, there's a prison down the road from us a little bit where most of the people in there are in prison from about 1 year to 10 years. Okay. So they have an out date that they can look forward to. You know, hey, I've only got 5 years. You know, wait a minute, I'm going to catch a write up. It's going to add 6 months to that. Whoa, I don't want to do that because
right.
You can work with them on how to put this. Hey, you better follow the rule. If you don't follow the rule, I'm going to get you in trouble. You can't do that where I'm at. Those guys, they don't care, man. They just absolutely don't care. Nothing to lose. Yeah, absolutely nothing to lose. And so you have to come working with them. It's based 100% more on respect. How you talk to them, how you treat them. You know, even at times, you know, when you have to write them up or have to get them in trouble, you don't add stuff to it because you're angry. You keep it, you keep it honest. Those guys, those are the things that they respect.
Isn't that the way it ought to be?
Yes.
In the prison or outside the prison, and that's the way we should be treating one another and respecting each other.
Well, I just saw earlier today I was reading, in a study, and it was saying that correctional officers actually experience more violent attacks than any other federal or state employees. That they are the highest. And I kind of go off subject there, but at Pendleton, you have the house that you're working in, that's kind of separated into two sides. One side houses probably 160 to 180, and on the other side, 160 to 180. So we'll run, let's say we're going to run rec or we're going to run chow. We'll run one side at a time. Well, you have 3 officers in this house. Now you have 180 prisoners out. Okay? You are outnumbered 180 to 3. You better believe you have to depend on your fellow workers. 100% you have to, because you cannot, you can't be watching everybody all the time. You're just you're opening, and I've seen it happen. We've watched videos and seen it happen. It's happened to friends of mine. Somebody going and opening a door for somebody, and then 3 or 4 guys come up from behind them and attack him and stuff like that. You have to count that, when you get on that radio and you yell that signal, that people are, no matter what, they are going to come to your aid. I mean, it doesn't matter. You could, and it's happened where you run into traps where you have guys staged up to where when first responders come in, they get jumped. And, but still, that's your brother on the ground in there being hurt. And no matter what, you got to go in there and get him. That's one guard for every 60 people looking at the numbers you just shared. And that's not good odds. No, it's not good odds at all. And, it's even though the state has recently raised wages significantly, they still can't keep people there. Well, still short-staffed.
It's going to take a special kind of person that can handle that, obviously, and I respect that. And you were talking about depending on that brotherhood, also depending on your prayers for the night before and those who are praying for you, right?
Yes, and it made me feel really good because, I just went to this discipleship walk this past weekend, and I had the opportunity to kind of let my guard down and say, hey, this is what I struggle with, because, I was telling them, 2 or 3 people get angry at you, be one day, and then they flat out tell you, when you come back in, you let us out for rec, we are getting you. We're going to get you. And so you go home and you're thinking to yourself, is it going to happen? Are they going to do it? All right. And that's in the back of your head for 2 to 3 days. Then you go into work and now you're sitting there waiting for the first time you have to roll open all those doors. Now, imagine the stress level that you're under.
I can't.
Because you're sitting there thinking, are 2 to 3 people going to come up behind me with weapons or anything like that when my attention is turned this way, and I was able to share that with them. And I had probably about 7, 8 different guys tell me that they were really, really going to lift me up in prayer, and to continue to kind of deal with that stress and to keep me safe. But, also have a lovely fiance that I know prays for me every single day and every night, along with my own prayers to not only stay safe, but to honestly go in and try to make a difference in these guys' life, because a lot of them grew up in such a way to where manhood is completely defined in a different way than as Christians we would define manhood. And to go in and try to live that out in front of them, it does make a difference.
Wow.
It does make it, because I've had offenders come up to me and tell me, Surguy, and it was funny because they'll do it away from other offenders. They'll come up, man, we're not supposed to, really connect with officers stuff. Man, we really appreciate you, man. You're actually a really good guy. We can tell that you care. And that means the world to me. Oh, it really does.
I would think so.
Yeah.
Let me ask you another question. With all the jobs, all the positions you've had over the years, give me the top couple. Share that with our folks.
Yeah. I think definitely this job tops as, one of the ones, be honest with you, I am one of the most compassionate about, feel the best about, even though with how difficult it is. And I think working in that, it's a hard one because I worked in a private practice in Tennessee. I really enjoyed that one. But I also, when I was accepted into a doctoral program in clinical psychology, and we had to go through a internship there. And I had 2 choices. I could go and work with this guy who had already accepted me and everything like that. And he told me that my majority of my patients I'd be working with are millionaires. He was kind of bragging everything. I get that and everything. But he had an extremely successful practice. And then I knew somebody that was needing help in a residential treatment home where kids that had been severely abused and neglected, they needed help there. And I actually went and worked with abused children. And I think that was one of the most satisfying jobs I've ever worked in as well, too.
You know what? To look at you, I don't see the heart. I'm hearing it and I see it on your face. I can't look through to it. I can see the size. I can tell you've worked out once or twice today. But to hear this, you're pretty much a complete package. That's awesome stuff. You're a good witness for God. Kind of getting close to wrapping this up, but what would you like the community, our culture, to know about the folks that you're dealing with? They're in prison.
One of the hardest parts, and I see it time and time again, is the reintegration back into the community.
Okay. Yes, that makes sense.
These guys come out, they have a felony. They have a very difficult time getting a job. And not only that, but the prison environment has become the normal for them. And so they bring that over and they project those beliefs of how other people act in prison. They project those beliefs upon their environment in general.
They've had to survive for the last X years.
Yes. And so it makes it really difficult for them to trust people, to connect with others and really reintegrate back into the community. And so if there was something, as a matter of fact, and I feel strongly with this guy. There was a guy there. He used to be the head, kind of like the president or the head member of the Aryan Brotherhood there at the prison. Well, he resigned. Told him I don't. I'm close to getting out. I don't want anything to do with this stuff anymore. Not getting in trouble. I don't care about this stuff anymore and everything. And he actually came to me, because I'd talked to him about the Christian Center. And I told him, it was an unbelievable place to where if you truly plug yourself into it, you can find people there that truly become like family to you. There's people that have been at the Christian Center for a long time. And part of the reason why is because it's become home. They feel like they belong there. They have meaning there. And this guy heard me talking about the Christian Center, and he came up to me and he goes, "Hey, when I get out of here, you think you can hook me up with that place?"
Wow.
And I was like, 100%, man. I'll talk with them and let you know. And there's already guys in mind that I have that I can kind of connect him with. And I think if overall we had more of that, to where if we had a way to plug these guys into healthy mentors and people to help them navigate what it's like to be back in life again, I really believe the recidivism rate would really fall.
So we need to give them a chance.
Yes, 100%.
We've had our second one, third one, fourth one. I think it says forgive 70 times 70.
70 times 7, yes.
And then start all over.
Yeah. And like I said, it's true. If people, if people judge me by my past, they wouldn't give me a chance. But, what I've seen a lot of times is that, especially destructive behaviors, people are most times acting out of a tremendous amount of pain and hurt.
Yes.
Tremendous amount of pain that they don't know what to do with. And I was so lucky that I had people come into my life that helped me along in being able to deal with those things, that I was able to get on the right track and everything.
Unresolved grief, that past hurt that, like you said earlier, you didn't know how to deal with it other than the bottle or the pill or whatever your drug of choice may have been.
Yep.
So is there anything else you'd like to share, Jack? Anything you can think of that I haven't asked or you haven't mentioned, or a takeaway that folks can have?
The prison has Sunday services. Come out and, get a hold of the prison, find out, connect with the chaplains out there and come out and spend some Sundays in praise and worship with some of these guys.
Praise and worship in prison.
That's right, yeah. Just like Jesus told us to do.
I'm kind of thinking of Paul. He had his praise and worship services there, sometimes alone, sometimes as a group.
Yep.
Well, listen, personally, on behalf of others who are listening, thank you.
Not a problem. Thank you.
Thank you for what you're doing, what you're about, the witness that you provide, the passion and compassion that you show those that we have many times rejected.
Yes.
Out of sight, out of mind so often. And I just keep thinking of that story of the prodigal son who took off, made his mistakes, but the father didn't just wait on him at the door. He ran after him.
Ran to him.
And we need to be about that. God bless. Thank you for your time and your willingness to share. Don't give up on yourself and don't give in to the urge. Your answer, your healing, your recovery may be in our next episode. Have faith in your recovery by having faith in yourself, your journey, and above all, God. Believe and stay in the fight.